I'm Annalie White. I am with the City of London Learning Well project, and we cover 5 boroughs. My background, a little bit about my background because you gave yours, is social work, child protection, adult safeguarding. Worked within schools and colleges, and like you, worked in prison service, not as a guest, but not as a resident, but as a guest, and also youth offending and probation services. And I'm going to talk about, we can't put anything on because my stuff's on a Mac and we can't get it on the screen. So we're going to look at a case study that, because we thought where we're going through all these different theories and concepts, if we think about a case study, because one of the things where people were sending me back emails was information on what they were doing, what they found quite challenging. So we thought we'd look at a case study and then for people to think about what they would use within this case study. So it's all going to just have to be speaking, you have to visualise it. Or then to maybe think about their own case study. How we're running information, advice and guidance within City of London is it's mainly myself, and that's happened because many of the people we're working with, when we're offering them to go and see information, advice and guidance within adult skills, one of the other services, they never get into those appointments for one reason or another. They'll say, well, why can't I talk to you? Because I've gone through the assessments with you, I've built up a rapport with you, or why can't I speak to somebody else? So while that can be very time consuming, you want people to get the best that they can get. But so what we've taken on someone now who's doing more assertive outreach, who's doing the mental health scores, so they will also be doing the information, advice and guidance. And I wanted to speak about a person called Carl, not real name, and he's with a project called the Single Homeless Project, and it's a project based in King's Cross, central London, and they work with people who are in recovery from substance misuse, as well as recovery with regards to mental health as well. They offer day services, but they've also got 4 or 5 residentials as well. And how Learning Well working with SHP, Single Homeless Project, is we go in every Wednesday for the morning, and anyone who wants to come along for IAG, they can come along. And because they're also running quite a few courses there, people can then get referred from the information, advice, guidance sessions onto the courses that we are running within SHP. The case studies going to think, with the case studies, I'd like you to think about challenges, because one thing people did say, they either felt challenged with holding a conversation, felt challenged in terms of when they get challenging information, because they don't want to feel like they're judging people or telling people what to do, and also how do you feed back information to somebody that might not be the most fragrant information, but we do need to give people the information nonetheless. So we thought we'd look at a case study that raised challenges of its own. So Carl is 38 and has been out of work for 7 years. He's working with the Single Homeless Project, who is supporting him getting back into employment and sustaining his tenancy. Because one thing SHP do is to help people maintain their tenancies, especially if they have suffered with regards to mental health. He has a history of anxiety and depression, which he says he self-medicated by use of cannabis and also using cocaine. Carl says that this led to him having a very sporadic employment history. Carl states he is in a very difficult situation at the moment, and that nothing is going right for him, and that all he does all day is sit in his room, just staring at the 4 walls, and just go to appointments, then go back to his room. His goal at the moment is, quote unquote, I just want to find work and have something to do. So when he came and sat down in front of me, that was that. And we were speaking earlier on to Helen, was like, when somebody says that, it's like, oh my gosh, you've absolutely got nothing to hang anything on, which in one sense is good, because some people come to the sessions with a clear idea of what they want to do. I want to do this, I want to get into hairdressing, I want to get into nursing, I want to do something, so it's fairly concrete. But when Carl says, I just want to do anything, I have no idea, that in itself can be a challenge. I found that challenging. So first of all, within that session, we did the MHQs, and that was a chance to start talking, building a little bit of rapport. But for myself, I didn't really focus on what those schools are saying at that time. And during the information advice guidance session, Carl speaks about his past employment, which for Carl was about 10, 15 years ago, he used to fly out to China and get counterfeit goods made and come back to England, which was kind of wow. And he was doing that, you know, 15, 20 years ago. Not many people were doing it at that time. He also worked within gyms. He just took any work he could, but he enjoyed selling stuff. We spoke about his educational experiences. He didn't particularly want to speak about that so much, so I didn't harbour on it. So that would tell me that that was a challenge that we would possibly go back to at some point in the conversation. We spoke about his experience with mental health issues and substance misuse as he saw it. And he was very open, very knowledgeable in as far as he got a lot of stress, especially flying out to China, getting all of this stuff, trying to get it back in, caused him a lot of stress, anxiety, and that's when he would self-medicate. Spoke about where his successes and failures have been in the past. Those were his words, speaking about successes and failures. And he was able to track those really well and say, well, I did well here, but I didn't do well in this point, and this was for whatever reason. Nobody helped me, customers took my stuff, or nobody was buying, whatever it was. And then we also spoke about how all of that fits into his educational and employment experiences, what he thinks about it. The conversation was very lively. It was really enjoyable speaking with Carl. And all the time while he's speaking, I mean, I did say to Carl there will be at times where I'll make notes. That's just so I make sure I got correct information. But I wasn't making copious notes because I didn't really want that to be the focus, or I didn't want him to feel that I was just sitting down, just making notes. So I wanted it to be as conversational as possible. We then started to look at the patterns within his work history and his life history as he saw it. I mean, I, at this point, did have some ideas, but I thought I didn't want to say any of this, but at the same time, did want to be able to maybe put little guide bombs in there to guide him to thinking, but I didn't really need to do that. He recognised himself. He was very challenged in completing the course, didn't really take much attention to things, found it very difficult to keep going to something, and what was the pattern that led to periods of unemployment. I mean, he was able to speak about his feelings of low self-esteem, low well-being, and anxiety, and self-medicating, and that did impact on periods of unemployment. And then he said himself, Carl thought that he would never get employment because of poor numeracy and literacy skills, and this is what he said, and that this would cause him a lot of stress. He would then get down, lock himself in his room, self-medicate, whatever that might be. He said he was able to master this. He held down most of his jobs until he reached a point, held down all of his courses until he reached a point where he couldn't hide the fact that he had very low numeracy and literacy skills. He would either get somebody to do the work, make out he didn't have his glasses, get somebody to read. He had loads of ways of masking it. We then looked at his recent history, and with this part, that's when we started to look at the mental health scores. And then we looked at those, and we sort of then started to sort of like thread things together. So we looked at recent history and how he may have felt over longer periods of time, and how this was managed. How did he manage that? Who did he manage that with? Did he get help? Did he get the support, or did he just let it go? Carl enjoyed speaking about his recent and longer history, and as he said, he found it quite enjoyable joining the dots. And then what he did want to do was to write everything down in chronological order. That's what he wanted, and to timeline it. And I did the writing for him, but we also like drew little signs like smiley faces, and he was quite good at drawing. That was one of his coping strategies, maybe. So we did a timeline, which he, as looking at it, he was able to then think about what he might need to do. We then went on to speak about current activities, about what Carl was doing now, what his future goals might be, and what was getting in the way. And the first thing Carl then said was the fact that he won't get anywhere unless he addressed his reading and writing, because that was the one big thing. I mean, and that's the thing that right from the beginning, I sort of like thought that could possibly be the case, but he came to that way of thinking himself. The conversations was challenging insofar as there was a lot to feed back with Carl. And even though Carl was very easy to speak to, you know, it's the first time I've met him. You don't know how strong someone is, how resilient somebody is, how fragile they might be. So as well as the mental health scores helped in terms of asking who he's got support. So after this meeting, who might he go and talk to? So his caseworker, we gave some of the information to his caseworker after. So that also helped me think the kind of things I could say and the kind of things he can go and share with others to get support. And joining things up from today, from what Catherine and Helen was saying, thinking of it in the think, get and keep model. In this session, Carl did a lot of thinking, and we spoke about quite a bit of getting. And funny enough, I met with Carl a week later. The getting was, I'm going to go and do a numeracy and literacy skill course, which was good that he wanted to do that. So then it was about, okay, getting that course. But then when Carl came back the next week, he decided he wanted to do something totally different. And I think that was probably because he was quite scared. He obviously knew from time when he's barren what was holding him back, but it's now he would need to do something about that. So the next time we met, it was about, then we set homework. And what we did do, we then thought about looking at stuff on YouTube where he can listen to stuff rather than having to write things down. So all the interests he had, so he wanted to get back into import-exporting in terms of going over to China, this, that and the third. And he wanted to do a course in that, but then we looked on YouTube and there's plenty of courses on YouTube about importing and exporting, and we spoke about the kind of things he would need to have in terms of being able to understand contracts, law, customs, excise. So it was about joining up his dots, which he was able to do. And I think I found it very challenging, but I think what I found easier for myself was to absolutely give him the challenges and allow him to see the challenges, and then when he did then bring the challenges, was to work with him in thinking solution. And I think in terms of what you were saying this morning, Helen, and selfing, and looking at the whole life, and I think in that situation we did look at the whole life, because Carl's biggest fear was, I don't have a CV, I have nothing to write in a CV. So I was saying to Carl about, I think, and also what you were saying, Brenda, about then looking about other skills. So rather look at a CV, think about a portfolio of work of skills that you've collected over time, whether it's budgeting because you look after 6 kids at home, whether it's you've got a brilliant listening ear because you help the person down the road with their problems. So thinking about that whole portfolio of skills that you have, and in that you can maybe recognise the gaps. So, but what I would like people to do now is, so I don't know if you're going to work in tables or pairs or something, is to, for yourselves, how do you work with Carl or somebody who you might have worked with before to recognise their barriers, and how do you feed this back to them in a way that is supportive but recognises the challenges, and what tools would you use? So that's what I'd like people to possibly think about, and to maybe get into, I don't know, groups of 4 or whole tables. And you don't necessarily have to use Carl, because we wanted that on the screen, but it's not. So you could think about somebody who you've worked with yourself, an imaginary person, or how you would have worked with Carl. That's how I worked with Carl, but how you might have worked with Carl.
When you do this, as Anna said, either use the case study that she has used, or think about maybe if you work in pairs or groups of 3 or 4, if you've got a particular learner that is challenging for you, use that as a case study so that it feels more relevant to what you want to do. But when you go through that and think about how you might work with that, try and use that kind of model of think, get, keep. So what might be the sorts of things, like Anna has explained, that you want people to think, you want to get them to think about, and then what might be some of the practical kind of issues in helping them get it, or indeed to keep it. So use that case study or apply one, yeah?